President, please be seated. The court is now in session. Today, the chamber continues to hear testimony of the witness Sok Supol in relation to Trapeang Thamel Dam work site. And at the conclusion of his testimony, the chamber will commence hearing testimony, rather the oral submissions on two issues. One is in relation to the request by Nuon Chea for additional witness in relation to Trapeang Thamel Dam work site pursuant to Rule 87.4, that is document E368. And second, it's the request by the international co-prosecutor in relation to hearing the testimony of the expert Isa Osman. That is his concern in relation to the confidentiality of the witness. And the document is E367 367.4 by the International Co-Investigating Judge. Graffier, please report the attendance of the parties and other individuals at today's proceedings. Graffier, Mr. President, for today's proceedings, all parties to this case are present. Mr. Nuon Chea is present in the holding cell downstairs. He has waived his rights to be present in the courtroom. The waiver has been delivered to the greffier. The witness who is to conclude his testimony today, that is Mr. Sok Supol, is present in the courtroom, and there is no reserved witness today. Thank you. President, thank you, Mr. Chia Siu Huang. The chamber now decides on the request by Nuon Chea. The chamber has received a waiver from Nuon Chea dated 30 September 2015, which states that due to his health, headache, back pain, he cannot sit or concentrate for long, and in order to effectively participate in future hearings, he requests to waive his right to participate in and be present at the 30 September 2015 hearing. Having seen the medical report of Nuon Chea by the duty doctor for the accused at the ECCC dated 30 September 2015, which notes the health condition of Nuon Chea, that he has severe back pain and when he sits for long, and recommends that the chamber grant him his request so that he can follow the proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs. Based on the above information and pursuant to Rule 81.5 of the ECCC internal rules, the chamber grants Nuon Chea his request to follow today's proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs via audio-visual means. And the chamber instructs the every unit personnel to link the proceedings to the room downstairs so that Nuon Chea can follow it, and that applies to the whole day. The chamber now hands the floor to the co-prosecutors to continue putting questions to this witness. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. Good morning, Counsel. Good morning to you too, Mr. Witness. Yesterday we discussed your work quota and what would happen to individuals or groups who failed to meet their work quota. Can you start off by telling us how often you personally or your group failed to meet your quota?
Although we strived our best, despite our exhaustion or sickness, we had to be there to be present at the worksite to meet the quota, and if there is the case, then the ration was not reused.
And on occasions when you failed to meet the quota, what kind of food would you receive? What was your ration if you failed to meet your quota?
For example, the ration was 3 ladles, and for failure to meet the quota, the ration would use the 2 ladles of gruel.
And what would you do to survive or to get enough to eat when your food ration had been reduced?
We had no other means. We just focused on completing the work quota so that we could receive the 3 ladles of gruel.
I want to ask you about something that you say in your OCIJ statement. This is document E3/7755. The page number in Khmer is 00279115. English 00293004. And French 00338221. This is what you say, quote, "The people in my group were re-educated, and our ration was reduced many times. At that time, we were very hungry. We picked up the burned part of the yam that the chefs threw away to eat. We would have been smashed if we were seen," unquote. Does that refresh your memory? Do you recall scavenging for food in that way?
Those people who had jammed, they threw away the burnt part of the skin, and we did not dare to pick up the thrown away jammed, but we actually secretly used our food to get it and to share it among the 3 of us. Because if we were caught of picking up the thrown away jam, we would be tortured.
And why do you say that you would be tortured if you had been seen picking up that food? What makes you say that?
Because we were told in the meeting that we should eat what we were given, and if we were to eat something out of the ration and caught, then we would be disciplined.
Can you tell us what kind of water you had to drink and how much of it was available?
If we were to work near a lake, then we drank water from the lake. However, if our work site was far from the water source, let's say half a kilometer, then the water would be transported by a truck to the work site. However, I did not know where they got the water.
And when the water was transported to you by truck, did you receive as much as you wanted, or was there a limited amount?
they gave us enough water. We could fill our bottle for that day.
Okay. I want to ask you now about the people you described yesterday. You said that there were young people at the dam armed with long knives or swords. Can you give us an estimate of approximately how old those people were?
Those people who were watching over us worked in a group. It could be in a group of 3 or 4. For instance, a woman and two pretty young children. The woman will be carrying a weapon while the two young children carried swords.
What kind of weapon would the woman be carrying, the older woman?
I did not recognize it because I was pretty young at the time. However, it was a pretty small weapon, and I don't see it used these days.
And just for clarity, are we talking about some kind of firearm, like a pistol or a rifle, or some other kind of weapon?
It was a 40 bat rifle.
And my recollection is that you described these people as militia. Is that correct? Were they militia or soldiers or guards? What were they exactly?
I heard that people refer to them as a militia, although I myself was never sure about it, whether they were soldiers or militia.
And do you know whether they were associated with the commune level or district level or sector level, or whom they reported to?
No, I did not. I only focused on the work, and I kept doing what I was assigned to. I did not know where they came from or where the orders came from.
You told us yesterday about one occasion you were aware of when a person was tied up to a wooden frame and then raised and lowered several times. And I think you also mentioned that he had been told that if he didn't improve his work, he would be killed. Now, my question is this something that you're only aware of happening one time, or was this particular punishment used on more than one occasion, to your knowledge?
I only witnessed one occurrence within my unit. The group of 3 people, that is those I refer to, actually took him away and did that. And when he returned, he told me that he has his feet hung upside down, and they dropped him from the wooden frame. And he was warned that if he did that again, the next time he would be killed.
Okay, thank you for that. I want to ask you now about beatings. Did you ever see the militia that you've described beat anyone? And if so, who?
While I was working, yes, I did see the beatings. However, it was not too severe to make the people collapse or fainted. Sometimes they push the workers with their long swords to force them to work hard.
And can you tell us under what conditions they would do that? Why would they do that to a particular worker? Under what circumstances?
I did not know, maybe they were too free, they didn't have anything to do, so to poke at the workers for fun.
Did you hear them say anything to the workers as they would poke them with their swords?
They ordered us to work harder. And if we were actually working hard, then they didn't poke us with a sword. But if somebody was thought not to work hard or was shivering from fever, then the person would be poked with a sword.
And was this done in public within the view of other workers?
Yes, it happened right at the spot where we were working. They poked workers with their swords.
During your time at the Trapeang Tma Dam work site, did you ever hear anything about special units for workers who were viewed as lazy?
Please repeat your question.
Did you ever learn anything about the existence of units that workers who were thought of as lazy would be sent to? Separate units.
It did not happen at the area where I worked. They did not have this special unit for the perceived lazy workers, but they set up a unit for the hardworking workers.
I'd like to ask you now about arrests. Did you ever see or did you ever learn about situations in which workers were tied up and led away either by the militia or by anyone else?
Yes, I saw some. Sometimes I saw it every few days. 2 or 3 workers were arrested and taken away, and I like to stress that those who were taken away never returned. I did not know where they were kept or whether they were kept in this so-called lazy group. I did not know.
I think you mentioned that you saw that happen every few days. Are you able to estimate on how many occasions you saw workers taken away during your time at the dam work site?
They were taken for re-education at the chief's place, although I did not know where it was. So I was afraid, and that's why I kept on working hard.
Who was it who tied up these workers and led them away?
It was those young militia. They tied up the workers and led them away. I refer to this group of militia who were watching over us while we were working there.
Were those workers in your unit or workers in other units that you could see?
No, they were not in my unit, but they were working nearby next to my unit, and we could see them while they could also see us. And sometimes they would throw a piece of dirt at us to signal us or to alert us that the group was coming, and we did that to them also to alert them if the militias approach us.
And why would you do that? Why would you try to signal your fellow workers that the militia was coming?
So that we alert them and they kept on working hard. Because when they were not here, we could do our normal work despite our exhaustion. But if they came, for example, they came from the west side, then we would signal one another to seem to work harder. And when they left, then we worked in a normal way.
Do you know why the people were arrested whom you saw being tied up and taken away?
I did not know the reason. I only saw the arrest. They were arrested while they were working.
During your time at the work site, were you ever required to make a biography or tell anyone about your personal background?
During the regime, I did not make any biography, nor did I see anyone do it. We only kept on working.
I think you mentioned a bit earlier that the people who were arrested were taken to the chief's house. Can you tell us who the chief was and where his house was and what it was used for?
They were taken to the chief house. However, I did not know where the house was. And the person who was in charge in the area was Tawal. But I did not know about the location of the house or the chief.
And just to be clear, are you saying that they were taken to Taval's house?
They said that they were taken to the chief's house, and I only knew that my chief was Tawal.
You said that these workers never returned. Given that they were not in your unit, how are you able to say that they never returned?
They worked in a group and they worked near where I worked. So usually they were put into three small groups And of course, when we were close to one another, I could see that one person from that group was missing since yesterday. And sometimes the person who was missed was replaced by someone else. So we could see straight away that it was not the same person, the same worker that was taken away.
Were these people who were arrested children or adults, or were there some of both?
The workers who were arrested were children. For the segments that I worked consisted only of children workers, not adult workers. Adult workers work on a separate segment.
And are you able to estimate approximately how many children workers you saw being arrested during your entire time at the work site?
Please repeat your question.
I know this may be a difficult question. Can you estimate the total number of children that you saw being tied up and taken away during your time at the Trapeang Tma Dam work site?
It is difficult to give you an estimate as it happened randomly. For example, this day only one worker was arrested and taken away, and a few days later, 2 or 3 workers were taken away. So I cannot tell you how many workers had been arrested for the duration of working at the dam work site. I myself was afraid of being arrested too.
You mentioned that the workers who were arrested didn't return. Do you know what happened to them?
No, I did not. They were taken away and disappeared. I did not know what happened to them.
Were you aware of any prisons or re-education offices near the Trapeang Tma Dam work site that workers were taken to?
No, I did not know. I only knew the location where I worked. I didn't know where they were detained. I only knew where I worked, and only those who worked in the prison or detention center would know, and it means those soldiers or militias who worked there would know about the location.
I want to ask you now about killings at the dam work site. Did you ever see any workers killed at the work site by the militia, by soldiers, or by anyone else?
Yes, I saw some in various places, but it did not occur that often. Once in every 10 days or so, they kill them and then we buried them or covered them with the dirt.
And you were speaking in the plural, so when this killing would occur, as you say, once every 10 days, would it be one person being killed or more than one person being killed?
When I was working over there, I saw it twice.
And on each of those occasions, how many victims were there? How many people were killed on each occasion?
I did not know whether or not those people were re-educated or so, but I only saw people brought these people, and then they got killed, and then we covered the dead body with the dirt.
My question is, on these occasions when you saw people being killed, did you see, was it one person who was killed? Was it two people who were killed? Was it 5? Was it 10? What was the number of people killed on each of those occasions?
I saw they brought them one at a time. They never brought many people. They meant to deter us. So they brought one, and then they killed him or her. And then the next 10 or so days, they would bring another one that was meant to deter all of us.
And why do you say that that killing was meant to deter all of you? What makes you think that it was intended as deterrence?
When they killed that person, they told other comrades, saying, "Comrades, in the future, if you fail to follow them, then your fate will eventually be like that person." So if they required us to dig the canal, we had to do. Otherwise, we would end up like the person who was killed.
And who specifically said that to you? Who told you that you would also be killed if you failed to follow your instructions?
At the times, they were called the militia. At that times, there were militiamen who came to tell us, and I did not know actually where these militiamen were positions, but they brought these people in, and I did not even know where they brought that person who was killed from either, because they only brought it and then killed in front of us, and then they said that if we fail to follow the instructions, our fate would be like the person who was killed.
You said that the person was killed in front of you. Can you estimate how many workers were present who witnessed these executions?
Many people saw the killing. I think there could have been around 50 to 100 people who actually saw the killing.
Can you tell us where the killings would take place?
They killed it at the dam site. It was, to my recollection, about 100 meters away from the corner of the dam.
And I think you said that we, meaning the workers, buried the bodies. Is that right? Was it the other workers who buried the bodies of these people who were killed?
That's what I saw, and immediately after the person was killed, we were required to carry dirt to cover the corpse.
Did you ever personally participate in the burying of the bodies of these people who had been killed?
Many people actually carried the dirt to cover the corpse. There were many people actually. We covered the dead body with dirt. We did not do it. I did not do it alone, but I did it together with other workers. And actually, the dead body was buried on the bed of the dam.
And can you tell us exactly who it was that killed the victim? Was it the militia or was it someone else?
Yes, they were the militiamen. I did not know where they came from and where they took the person from either. When we were working over there, there was no military men at that time, but once they brought somebody in, then they were militia who brought that person to be killed. And then they would go into different directions. We could not even recognize their face, and we were very frightened of our fate as well. So whenever we saw the militiamen came, all of us would put our face down. We dare not even look at their face.
Can you tell us how these people were killed? What weapons were used? What was the technique for the killing?
They use the stick to beat the person to death.
I'd like to ask you now just briefly about the health conditions of the workers at the site. Did the workers at the site get sick often? And if so, what kind of illnesses did they have?
In terms of health conditions, we were all weak. We were sick, but we dare not stop working. We had to continue working until we collapsed. And then if we refuse to carry out the work for the days, they would accuse us of being conscious illness. So we would eventually be re-educated. So at that times, I was told that we had to continue working without stopping. And one day I was sick, and then they actually brought me some tablets, some pills, and I did not recognize it because it is small and it looks like tablet but something, but I had to take it, and we had to continue working at that times. We dare not stop.
I'd also like to ask you about the hygiene conditions. Can you tell us whether there were any toilet facilities, whether you had any way of bathing yourself, whether your food was clean, things like that?
Well, in terms of hygiene, it was nothing actually. As for the call of natures, we did not have any latrine. We actually could release ourselves anywhere where we could at the times. But as for the urine, we have to collect urine. We have to keep it together so that they can use it as the fertilizer. So we had to keep it in a place.
In your OCIJ interview, you say that you eventually ran away from the Trapeang Tama Dam work site. Can you tell us why you decided to run away?
Because at that times I overworked and the working condition was harsh. So I thought to myself that if I continue, I would die anyway. So I would take the risk of fleeing. So I fled into the jungles. It took me about half a month. And then I got to a little bit better place where I had some potatoes over there that I could eat. So I continue walking, and then I heard people screaming because the excavator and tractor was actually pushing the people into the hole, and they were actually screaming for help.
And I'll come to that in just a minute. Can you tell me, do you know how long it was before the end of the Khmer Rouge regime that you escaped from the dam work site? How many months?
I escaped from the dam work site. Well, I could not recall the date because I was rather young, but in my estimation, it was about 2 or 3 months before the liberation. At that time, I ate a raw potato. We did not have any fire to actually grill potato, so whatever we could get at the times, we ate it, and at night we would try to go back to the potato plantations, and then we would get the raw potato and eat it.
Now, a moment ago you mentioned arriving at a place where you saw people screaming and falling into a pit. Are you able to estimate how far that place was from the Trapeang Tama Dam work site?
The President, Mr. Witness, please hold on, and International Counsel for Mr. Kilsumpon, you may proceed.
Oui, bonjour, merci Monsieur le Président. J'objecte sur la ligne de questionnement qui s'annonce, puisque là, clairement, compte tenu de témoins, à savoir que
Yes, indeed, there is a problem with the interpretation equipment.
The President, it seems that there is a problem with the interpretation. Court officer is now instructed to check whether or not it is being sorted out.
Mr. President, Counsel can speak now. We can hear her now.
The President, Council on Takise, you may proceed. Please repeat your observation earlier because there was no translation earlier in the comment you made.
Très bien.
Very well. Let me repeat what I said. What I said was that I object to this line of questioning that the prosecutor is preparing to start, bearing in mind the witness's prior statements in which he stated that he worked at length far from the 1st January dam, and the witness also pointed out that he didn't see any security centers. He has already made mention of executions he witnessed on the Trapiang Tamar dam worksite. Under those circumstances, if the prosecutor wishes to question the witness on the new site, I would like to point out to the chamber that that is not in the severance order, and this is a point which is therefore not within the scope of this trial, so the co-prosecutor cannot continue to put questions to the witness in this particular line of questioning.
Mr. President, if I could just respond briefly. My first question was how far this location was from the Trapiang Tamar Dam. I'm trying to figure out whether this was someplace that was close enough to be inherently part of the site. If it was not, then I would seek the Chamber's leave to just ask very limited questions about the equipment that the witness describes having seen at that site, in light of the fact that the witness says that there was no equipment being used to build the Trapiang Tamar Dam.
The President. The objection by the Defense Counsel for Mr. Kyusamporn is not sustained because even if the questions is not that precise, but it is related to the facts concerning Trapiang Tamar work site, so the witness is now instructed to respond to this question. Mr. Witness, please respond to the last question posed by the prosecution. If you can recall, otherwise we will ask Mr. Prosecutor to repeat his last question. It is likely that you do not recall it, so Mr. Prosecutor, please repeat your question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, are you able to tell us what the approximate distance was from the site that you just described with the pits, the distance from that site to the Trapiang Tamar Dam?
In my estimation, It was about 60 to 70 kilometers away from Trapang Tmor worksite to Chumka Canal or Chumka Ko.
In that case, I'd just like to ask you a very specific question. You describe seeing a tractor and one or more trucks in use at that location. Now, based on the work you were doing at the Trapang Tma Dam, could that tractor and could those trucks have been used to help the workers there dig the earth and transport the earth to build the dam?
The President, Mr. Witness, please hold on, and Councillor Coupe, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I object to this question. This is asking for speculation. The witness at the time must have been 12 or 13 years old. He cannot possibly say anything about trucks that he saw some 70 kilometers away from where he worked, whether there was any connection. This is pure speculation the prosecution is seeking.
Mr. President, perhaps my question wasn't clear. I was intending to ask, I'm sorry.
Oui.
Yes. I suppose what the co-prosecutor's intention is, insofar as the witness has stated that he was at 70 or 80 kilometers from the Trapang Tma dam worksite. Not only, as my colleague has said, the prosecutor is trying to get the witness to speculate, but he is also trying to get the witness to talk about a place that was 70 kilometers from the Trapang Tma dam worksite, whether he is trying to get this witness to speculate in order to elicit questions from the witness, which would be out of the scope of the trial. But I think this question should be rejected, Mr. President.
Mr. Prosecutor, do you have any response to the objection made by the two defense teams?
My question might not have been clear. My question was whether this equipment was of the type which could have been used in the kind of construction work that the witness was involved in. Of course, he was a child. Of course, he's not a construction expert, but he knows what he was doing at the Trapang Tma Dam, and he saw what this equipment was doing at this other site. So I think he probably can tell us whether the equipment could have been used to assist, what was of the type that could have been used to assist the workers at the Trapang Tma Dam work site.
But I recall this witness saying that he didn't see any machinery at all at the Trapang Tma Dam work site. So how can he even make a comparison?
President. The objections by the two defense teams to the last question posed by the prosecution is founded. For that reason, the chamber asked the witness not to respond to the last questions by the prosecutor. And at the same time, we wish to advise the prosecution and the lead co-lawyer for the civil parties that we would give you only 15 more minutes after we resume of the first session of the morning break. That is to compensate the time lost for you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, turning back to your experience at the Trapeang Tma Dam, I'd like to get your reaction to a statement that was made by Khieu Samphan in a speech that he gave in April of 1977. And this document is E3/201, Khmer 0029 2810-11, English 0041 9516, and French 0061 2170.
Mr. President, of course I object to the question the way it has been phrased by the co-prosecutor, because if I understood well, he is asking the witness for his opinion. And if I'm not mistaken, he said that he never met Khieu Samphan. So if we're asking an opinion of him, well, first of all, he's not an expert, and therefore, under these conditions, the question should be rejected. And once again, comments about what Khieu Samphan might have said before or after the facts, outside of a context that the witness does not know, does not allow the chamber to assess properly the credibility of the witness or to have factual elements on the Trapeang Tma Dam. So we find that this is kind of a backhanded trick that is not appropriate here. So if the co-prosecutor wishes to use Khieu Samphan's statements, he might be able to do so during the final submissions. But doing so here with the witness who has no connection with Khieu Samphan, this is not the moment. So therefore, I'm asking the deputy co-prosecutor not to be allowed to put that question to the witness. Thank you.
Mr. President, first of all, I hadn't asked a question. All I'd done is read some ERNs. I didn't even have a chance to read the quote that I want this witness to react to. Counsel just said that this witness can't talk about comments that Khieu Samphan made before or after. This is a comment from April 1977. It's precisely the time period we're talking about. And it's one in which Khieu Samphan is discussing the experience of children in democratic Kampuchea and describing it in a particular way. Children working in democratic Kampuchea. This witness was a child working in democratic Kampuchea at exactly that time. I think it's fair to have him react to the description that Khieu Samphan gave of the working conditions and of the way that the children who were working subjectively felt about it. If it assists the chamber, I could read the quote before your deliberation if you intend to deliberate.
President, we haven't heard the question from you that whether this witness ever heard the speech made by Khieu Samphan. So please tell us whether you have put such a question to the witness today or even yesterday afternoon, And if not, then he is not in a position to make an assessment or to give his comment on the speech. Please indicate to the chamber whether the witness heard the speech made by accused Sampon, and if so, when and by what means.
Your Honor, I think the only way for me to do that would be for me to read the quote to the witness and then ask him whether he heard Khieu Samphan say those things.
Then I can suggest to the co-prosecutor a question. You could say, witness, have you ever heard a speech by Khieu Samphan? And then we will see.
Good morning, Mr. President. I think we can proceed if the President grant the Deputy Co-Prosecutor to read that extract so that the witness can say whether during the regime his living condition was similar to what was said by Khieu Samphan in his speech. I think this is reasonable, and that it also reflects the living condition as well as the truth in the speech made by Khieu Samphan. Then the Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you can read the quote of the speech first, what it's all about.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, just to remind you, the quote that I'm going to be reading is from a speech that Khieu Samphan made in April of 1977. And this is what he said, quote, "Our children do not play with toy cars, toy boats, and toy guns, which were formerly imported at considerable cost. Our children are happy with driving sparrows away from the crops, tending cattle and buffalo, collecting natural fertilizer, and helping to build dams and embankments and dig reservoirs and ditches." End of the quote. And my question, if the chamber would allow it, is whether that speech by Khieu Samphan is an accurate reflection of your experience as a child working on a dam project during the Democratic Kampuchea period.
President, if there is the case, then the objection by the defense team is overruled and the chamber will allow the question to be put to the witness. And Mr. Witness, please respond to the last question put to you by the Deputy Co-Prosecutor. Witness, it is rather long for me to catch it, so I don't fully get it. Deputy Co-Prosecutor, please read the excerpt again, but make it rather short to make it simpler for the witness to understand so that he can respond to it. And please try not to use the word, do you understand? Because these kinds of phraseology is for the expert, not for an ordinary witness like this gentleman.
Sir, I'll read the quote one more time, and I'll shorten it to the most important part. He said, quote, "Our children do not play with toy cars, toy boats, and toy guns, which were formerly imported at considerable cost. Our children are happy, helping to build dams and embankments and dig reservoirs and ditches." Unquote. Sir, can you tell us your reaction to this statement? Were you happy to help to build the Trapeang Tama Dam?
I don't know what to respond to you.
Mr. President, I think I'll leave it there. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Witness. I'll now, well, it may be time for the break, but I've finished my questioning. Thank you.
President, thank you. It is now appropriate for us to take a short break, and let me have a break and resume at 10:30. Court officer, please assist the witness during the break time and invite him back into the courtroom at 10:30.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រោកឈរ